Okay, so welcome. This is the Board of Finance special meeting. It's Wednesday, April 6th, 2022. And this is Rebecca O'Donnell, and I'm going to turn it over to Ken Kellogg to read the script for the public meeting or the electronic meeting.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. Please note, this meeting is being conducted utilizing electronic equipment in compliance with State Law Public Act 21-2. As such, the meeting is being recorded and will be available to the public in compliance with state law. If you're attending remotely, please remember to mute your microphone unless you're speaking. Anyone participating remotely should state their name and title, if applicable, at the outset of each occasion that such person is speaking. All votes taken during which any member of this body are participating remotely shall be taken by roll call unless the vote is unanimous. The chat features will not be utilized nor considered during the meeting. And turn it back over to you.
Okay, I'd like to take attendance. Is Dane on the call or in the room?
I'm here.
Okay, Greg?
I'm here.
Steve?
Present.
And then Mary.
She will not be here tonight.
Okay. And then Mike, so we will wait for Mike to call in.
All right. We'll stand in recess for now.
Yes, please. Yeah, let's stand recess.
Okay.
Okay. I'm going to
Chat amongst yourselves.
All right, you just need to call the meeting back to order and you're good to go.
All right, we are back to order.
Maybe just make a note that Mike is now present.
All right.
So Mike, the only other thing we've done is Ken read the script.
Perfect. Great. So let's get to work.
And we're taking roll call, so we're into the workshop and it's all yours.
So basically what we wanted to hit primarily was revenue. So I don't know if Heidi's got it up there. There's a couple of areas that I want to specifically take a look at. First of all, I think we want to look at our revenue on interest because basically we're in a rising rate environment now. So I think we could probably be a little more aggressive than we were originally on that. Certainly something to look at. And then I would love to also look at just the town clerk and building because it seemed like they were certainly exceeding plan at this point as well.
Heidi, I've made you a co-host, so you should be able to share your screen. Beautiful. Everybody see it?
I can see it. Can we just make sure we announce what pages?
This is a bottom.
Revenue is 3, right?
So she should be on page, is that 20? It's like page 20.
And I'm not in front of a computer, so you probably have to talk me through it. But
Yeah, it's funny.
Property taxes, yes.
Yeah.
Section 3, page 20.
Let's do this. I don't know why this is not joining with the other screen. It's like disconnected. All right, we'll just keep going. If I do that, you can see the appropriate columns. Sorry, we're having a
technical issues, that's all right.
screen view. Well, it's just the view is odd here, but we can see the spreadsheet fine. Just, you know what, we'll just hide the video of the other people.
Yeah, I was gonna say just.
Now we don't. All right. Where do you want to start?
I mean, it's wherever we want to start, but I mean, I know we had spoken to the treasurer and, he gave us some indication on his thoughts. So maybe we start there.
Okay,
Yeah, so again, Mike, the communication that you and I were involved with the treasurer, he felt we'd right now, the current budget is at 100,000. And he felt with the you know, where rates are projected to go, he felt, or I believe his range was 175 to 275.
Right. And just to bring everybody to perspective, I mean, what were we running? I know we went back to look at like 2017 and some of the previous years' numbers just to, because again, obviously the numbers have come down dramatically in the last couple of years with rates.
yeah, a lot higher.
Yeah.
You have a priority there, Fred?
The prior year, well, the
I can pull up the account inquiry if you want.
yeah, you want to do that, Heidi? Then we could see the last, 8 years history. I mean, there were some years there we were significantly higher than where we
Like
are
down
now.
now.
Probably approaching
Public.
600,000.
Have a good night. What was the number before?
Heidi's pulling it up. There were some years there, Mike. We were, what was it, 2020? Was that 660?
Right. I mean, that's what I was trying to get
Yeah.
to everybody to be aware of because they probably weren't, but it was significant. And also to keep in mind, I think with our fund balance being higher, we obviously have more investable funds typically.
Right.
Correct.
So, I mean, based on the conversation that I had and based on some of the numbers we're getting, I certainly felt like we could easily go to 175 or 200 without putting any risk on the.
Yeah, so investment interest revenue in fiscal year 19 was 900. In fiscal year 20, it was 684. That's as far back as I have here. I know Heidi's trying to pull up more.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I'm
Can you see Munis?
Yeah, so
kind of small, but
18 was 483. 2017 was 248. 2016 was 180. Again, that's when rates were rising during that period.
I mean,
So what you're looking at now is the investment interest revenue,
yep.
the account ending in 140800.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is that 100? Right? Yeah.
And as proposed by the council, it's 100. This is on page 21 for anyone who is following.
Following along.
Yeah, in just above the middle of the page. So,
I mean,
so you make it 175?
I'd say. Even,
Well, if we're up in there, you want to make it an even 2?
I would.
That's kind of what I was leaning towards was based on the numbers you're throwing out there. I think 200 is safe. Let's throw in 2.
Okay.
As long as everybody's comfortable with that.
Yeah, you're getting
Based on what I'm seeing.
you're getting a lot of head shaking in the affirmative here in
Okay.
town hall.
Wonderful. All right, so let's go with
Yeah.
2. Let's jump to town clerk because that was another one that obviously I think we saw a big tick up with all the transaction fees that we tend to pick up from real estate goes into that, or is a big portion of that number. But maybe we can, Ron, I don't know if you had a chance to talk to the town clerk today.
I did. So again, Mike, that's right now the current budget is at 550. Actually, let's start with the current year we're in right now. The budget's 500,000. She already blew through that. She's at 551. She's trending for about 735. What we have budgeted for next year is 550,000. And fiscal year 21 actual, so last fiscal year actuals year to date were 757. So obviously the current environment isn't a normal environment, right? So 21 and 22, there's been a lot of property transactions. So
Correct.
Will that continue into next year is the
What is she at right now?
for the current year?
Yeah.
551 through March 30th.
mean, with interest rates going up, you probably don't go too high, but
Yeah.
Right. That's what I'm thinking. I mean, it's certainly not going to keep growing to the growth, but if she's going at the 700 clip, then, maybe a 600 clip makes sense.
Yeah, that's what I was just thinking. Make that 550 600.
600. Okay. Anybody else have any
Greg, you
thoughts
got
on that one?
Ken and I had the exact same conversation about an hour ago, and 600 was the is kind of the number we were.
Mediocre minds.
We were like 550 or 600, so
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
we don't want to be too,
Pencil that through.
yeah.
So
Too crazy aggressive, right?
that's town clerk's revenue, account 140185 on page 20.
And then the other one I wanted to look at was building,
Building.
which kind of goes hand in hand because Ken's doing a wonderful job of getting everybody coming in, so we got permits coming.
So building permanent revenue is set right now at 340,000.
Yeah.
And that's the account 140115, also on page 20.
So that one, based on, right now, we're currently at 241, and it's tracking to about 322. So
Okay.
that one isn't,
That's pretty,
yeah.
That's tight.
So that one you're telling me to leave alone? Is that what you're telling me?
Yeah,
I would, yeah.
yes.
Yeah, I talked to Rick Schultz today, and he thought keeping it where it was probably prudent too. So,
Yeah, last fiscal year, the fiscal year ended 2021 was 339. So yeah, a target of 340, and given that we're not there yet, I think we ought to leave it.
Yeah, I mean, there is a little seasonality. I mean, I think some of that stuff come in the spring when the building picks up, but I'm comfortable leaving it then. Let's do that. Unless anybody has a strong opinion otherwise. And then those were the only ones that kind of jumped out at me. But anybody else wants to discuss any of the other numbers, obviously we should, we can go through line by line, but those are the ones that seemed like, they were some obvious potential moves. Did anyone see any other revenue lines they wanted to take a look at? I'm assuming we have no updates on ECS or any major changes from the state at this point.
no,
I have
nothing,
not seen it, no.
nothing, no, nothing at all.
So my only question.
Yeah, it all seems quiet.
So Mike, my only two questions were on the tax levy, the supplementals, and the prior year.
That's great questions. Yes, that's good. Let's do those.
So I guess my question is, where are we now? I mean, what do we have how much of a backlog do we have that's uncollected going forward? The numbers
Right.
are set.
As Manny would say, is the well dry?
Yeah,
I
okay,
would say that every year though.
right. Well,
I know. That's why it was funny.
right, so we've been doing a good job of collecting, number one, and number two, the amount that's in the budget right now is less, in both categories, are less than our actual for fiscal year ending 2021. So unless somebody's telling me, we've got a big backlog that we can draw from.
So the
Yeah, no, they seem like they made sense, but again, let's get some commentary on that. Ron, you got anything on those?
Yeah, so I can tell you, and again, I spoke with the tax collector today, so current, percent collected as of 4/6, she's got about 1.1 million right now on the current year levy.
Okay.
Uncollected.
Uncollected.
Okay. So that seems like it's a reasonable number because that's usually, if my recollection is correct, we usually are somewhere between 1 and 1.2. So that seems like it makes logical sense.
Yeah, so that's saying we're going to
What was
collect.
the other one?
That's saying we're going to collect 70% of it roughly, or 75%.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's traditional, yeah. Because if we start doing math on a 98.7% collection rate on 80 million, that sounds about right. Cocktail napkin math, that seems to make sense.
So I think that even though it was,
Lower, we leave it.
yeah,
Okay. What was the other category?
The motor vehicle supplemental.
no, I was talking about both the supplemental and
Supplemental,
the
right.
prior year revenues, simultaneously, but.
Right. Okay.
Because those are the big ones. And,
All right.
and
Anything else in revenue we should look at, Ron?
Well, the tax interest revenue, I think at 300,000 is also probably a good number. Right?
Mm-hmm.
We were 268, 266 and change
Right.
prior year, 200. It's an increase from last year's budget, but it's probably doable.
Okay.
I mean, the other big.
Ron, were there any other things that jumped out at you?
The other big revenue number is always the EMS revenue, but, which we did bump back up, but that's largely because of, we had reduced it during COVID because call volume was
Right.
down. They're actually this year going to probably blow through I mean, I know they're going to hit their current number. They're probably going to exceed even what we budgeted,
Yes.
even the 656 that's in there now.
Yeah, so I actually have, so they're at 503 right now,
Right.
and they're tracking for 670,
Yep.
and we've got 656 budgeted.
Right. So I think that's a good number.
I think that's a good number.
I just have a question about
Sure.
how do we get revenue from EMS?
It's all from, the vast majority is from insurance billing.
Okay.
So it's coming from third-party insurers. There is a small amount of, private pay, but most of it's insurance.
Okay.
Medicaid, whether it's,
Yep.
Medicaid.
Reimbursement
or,
from the trips, right?
car insurance, medical insurance.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Thanks
Yep.
for explaining that.
Absolutely. Yep. And call volume is going up, which is why, you're billing more.
Everybody's back out and
yeah.
about, yeah.
And we are covering a much, much larger percentage of overall calls as well, even with call volume going up. So,
Mhm. Okay.
so hand in hand. And the way EMS works in Connecticut is if you don't transport, you can't bill. So
Mhm.
So why are we able to cover more? Why are we able to do more?
we did
now?
we did some changes in staffing. So we kind of reworked some of the contracted services and the volunteers. So they're kind of working more together than this is all a volunteer crew and this is all a paid crew kind of a thing. So we kind of spread it out and we're getting much greater coverage overall. And we're also getting more coverage on like the second and third calls that a lot of times.
We used to go right.
You have to
We
go,
used to call out to.
if you have to call mutual aid, yeah. So if a mutual aid, and listen, mutual aid, every town in this whole area is going crazy with mutual aid right now because there's a shortage of providers, right?
Mhm.
So mutual aid's never going to go away, but we try to keep it as low as possible because for obvious reasons, you want to serve the community, but there's a financial impact as well. If you cover the call, you get the revenue from it. If you don't,
You don't.
it goes to.
I didn't realize how we were able to cover
Yeah.
more.
Yep.
That's great.
Yeah, it was actually something that the chief, they actually during COVID, they kind of were trying to come up with a different way to do it. So we're gonna keep it in place for now and.
Yeah, it's working.
Yeah,
Getting more
it's working.
coverage.
Yep,
Definitely.
yep.
Yeah.
Working, let's do it.
Yep.
All right. Anybody have anything else on the revenue side?
No.
So one of the questions I had for Ron, I think it was my final question I had for Ron was I know on the grand list, we saw a pretty dramatic increase on cars. So I had two questions. One I already got an answer to, but I'll share with everybody is that, when values go up, we get a lot of challenges, but apparently there is not a challenge available on motor vehicles, so that's good. But I did want us to take a look at what the collection rate assumption was, because typically the collection rate on motor vehicles is lower than on the overall grand list.
Which page is this?
So Mike, her current year collection rate on motor vehicles is 95.8.
Jesus,
Yeah,
that's pretty damn good.
it is. And when I take that and I blend it over the projected grand list for next year,
Right.
I'm coming up with
So that's
a,
much higher than I thought it was. I mean, I thought it used to be like 90%. That's amazing.
Portion of
Yeah.
the grand
Motor
list,
vehicle, yeah.
which went up.
so over
Page
the
14 has
grand
the
projected
breakdown.
grand list for next year, that's given me a 98.68 collection rate. And that- So we're pretty,
I
we're
think that
spot
might,
on with
I
the
think that might call
98.7.
it close. Yeah. 0.02 of a point, I think I'll give you.
Yeah, so it wasn't bad.
All right. Then my worries are relieved, so that's good. That was my only other area of concern. So other than that, is there any update on the grand list numbers otherwise?
They're within $1 million of where we sat when the first selectmen's budget came out, and with the
Yeah, I think by the time we have your next meeting, we're gonna be able to refine it more, but I think there may be an opportunity to dial back the contingency in the mill rate calculation based on where the appeals, based on where the BAA
Are coming
appeals
up.
landed, which could obviously have some upside on mill rate calculation.
I'm also going to take another part of that. It's a second contingency for the elderly
Right.
homeowner tax credits.
Yep.
I'm just taking I'll be taking another hard look at that. I actually did today, and I think we're going to have some pickup there also.
All right. And then I know we discussed putting that 250 in the contingency for the heating in the last meeting. Does everybody have any more thoughts on that? I know Ron called a couple of towns, and most of them are building in about a 10% contingency, which would get us there with that.
Yeah, I did speak to both Newtown and Trumbull. They are building, their contingencies are, they didn't put it in one contingency line. They have it built into each line item. But they're right. They are building in a contingency, and 10%, I know, was, one of them had 10%, the other one didn't disclose, but our 250 was right at around 10-12%.
So Mike, this is Steve. I'm still comfortable with that 250.
Okay,
Yeah,
good.
this is
Me too.
this is Rebecca. I'm good with that as long as it ties out to a percentage. I just didn't want to have a lump sum not tied out to, why.
Just something that made
I'm
sense.
good with
I
that.
appreciate that.
Yep.
Good. All right.
So I guess, this is Ken, I guess, Mike and the rest of the board, I guess the question is, I know you wanted that to be budget neutral.
Right.
One approach is appropriating an equal amount from fund balance. But you've also made some increases in revenue as well that would also offset it. So
Based on where we're at with fund balance, Mike.
What's that?
Yeah. I mean, based on where we're at with fund balance, and I know we're at the high end of our spectrum, I would be comfortable appropriating the fund balance for it at 250. And then maybe, that might pull our mill rate, down to 37. I don't know. I mean, once we run the numbers through, but.
Right. I mean, I'm either approach, there's,
Because again, it's a special, it's not a known thing. So I like the fund balance to cover contingency. So I like that approach. We've always taken that approach. I don't have a problem with it.
Yeah, that's been a philosophy we've all used in the past.
Hey, and we may not need to touch it.
Right.
Right, exactly.
And then if
But if we
you
do
don't
it,
touch it, you haven't overtaxed for it. So that's
Correct, exactly. That's my
That's a better
feeling.
way of handling it.
So one of the things on our list tonight was to talk about fund balance. Do we have an updated number of any kind?
So again, projecting through the end of this fiscal year, it looks like we're going to be, my best projection at this point is just shy of 17 million.
which is a little.
Which is what percentage then?
It's
That's probably a little bit higher than I had
A little bit higher.
originally, well, a little bit higher than the original projection that I presented to council, because that was, which was, I don't have the exact number here. It was probably maybe just north of 16, Ron. I can't remember.
You were just,
Right.
you were just north of 16%.
No, 16.
Oh, million.
Yeah, the projection for the end of this fiscal year, when at the time that I presented council, was a 17.5%.
Yeah,
Oh,
right.
okay. I mean, the dollars and the percents are so close
They're
that
close,
I'm
yeah.
getting,
Yeah,
I am
We'll call it
getting.
the same, right?
yeah, so
Yeah.
the high, again, the high end of the range is, I believe, is it 16.67?
16.67. Yep.
I'm coming up with like 17.5%
Okay.
of fund balance based on as a
Projection.
percentage of the next year's budget,
Project, right.
projected budget.
That's,
This
what I had, yeah.
this fiscal year's ending cash as a percentage of next
Next
year's
year's.
expense. And we're at
Correct.
17%, 17.5%. So yeah, absolutely. I have no objection to using.
Use the fund balance, right?
Absolutely.
All right.
I mean, but my
Good.
issue, as I expressed at a prior meeting, was, we don't specify what do we do when we're over, so it gives us.
Right, but I think
flexibility.
once we have those numbers at the end of the year, come after June is done, and when we're in the summer, I think we have that meeting just to discuss fund balance and where we want to see it. So I think that's a whole discussion for the summer.
Right, but I agree, I shouldn't say but. The point being is that it doesn't specify anything, it gives us the flexibility, and this would be the time to utilize that flexibility. Because we're clearly over the 16.67%. And
Correct.
And with everything we know about where we're tracking, I don't see any reason why that would materially change.
And we also know we could have some cliffs next year, so I'd rather keep some powder dry and not use it this year if we don't need to. So that's where I'm leaning.
So that would be the adjustment I would make, is plan on taking it from fund, plan on taking that 250 from fund balance if we need it.
I agree. Good. All right. Anybody have anything else?
Yeah, so Mike, I wanted to ask the first selectman whether they had come up with a number for what it would cost to do a drainage, a sewer study.
We'd have to put an RFP out for that. That would.
Do we have any way to estimate it? Okay.
I'd have to, I don't know if another town would do it, but I mean, that would be, I don't know. I don't know if we would be able to get like I suppose we probably could get a.
Yeah, I mean, are we able to speak to the road company and just get a swag?
Well, but the road company, I mean, they don't, I mean, they're looking at pavement and they're not really looking at drainage.
Right.
And,
Okay.
I mean, again, I can.
So here's.
I think that was something that Chris, at least when I left the meeting, his intention was he would try to engage and look into it, but I don't think that's an easy.
Okay.
I mean, to do a town-wide study like that, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I got to, I mean, just for what it's worth, my biggest concern is, that study's only going to be, I mean, for how long is that data going to be worthwhile? Because after a few years, you'd still have to.
Well, I mean, again,
Well,
right?
I agree with you on that. I understand that concern. I think one of the things that Steve and I spoke about offline was like, I think once again we get to the summertime, it might be a full meeting of understanding project management on roads, where a multi-year plan is, what the best process is going forward, and how we're going to attack that. I just think we're at that point now where, we need to all understand what the issues are, what the drivers are, and how we can speed it up, if any way there is a way to speed it up, if that makes any sense.
So Mike, this is Steve. So I have a couple thoughts. Number one, my understanding of what a study would do is it's going to inventory all of the storm drains to identify primarily which ones have the metal in it and have to be replaced. So if it's more than that, if it's just general condition, then yeah, that condition's going to deteriorate over time. But I thought the focus was on determining which ones, you know, had the metal and which ones really had to be done before we touched the surface. That's point number one. My second point, which is a question, in the capital budget, there's something called Master Town Drainage Study. Under Public Works in the 5-year plan, is that something different?
Something different.
Okay.
That was an engineering project with engineering moving into Public Works.
Okay.
It was migrated there. And that was more of a
Side of the road.
concept of a study more as relates to wetlands, drain, you know, overall,
Oh, okay.
that kind
All right.
of a
Okay.
drainage study.
All right.
So I will ask Chris Nowacki about your thought on just evaluating the material in the drainage system. That's not, my understanding of what you're talking about was more of we're going to go scope every single pipe and drainage, because it's not just the catch basin, right? It's the whole length of
It's
the
the whole length
process.
of the pipe.
Right. So, and for them to scope it, in order to really determine whether or not do you need to dig this up and replace it, they scope the whole thing, right?
Correct.
So that's what I thought you were talking about, and that's going to be expensive, you know?
Well,
So-
but the problem that I've got is if I agree that we don't replace the road surface until we
Right.
understand what's underneath it. But the way we're doing it now is there are probably roads that are in poor enough shape, the asphalt's in poor enough shape, but we can't do anything because we haven't studied the underneath. And that's why I think we need to get to the underneath. Even if if you do my road and you say my road is fine underneath and it's a 53 or less, then maybe it should be done and put on the list to do this year and next year. On the other hand, there's a whole bunch of roads that are going to need our guys to replace pipe. And we don't know where we are. And I think either our guys need to do it, quote unquote, full time, whatever that means, or we need to look at getting the information because it is now a gate. It limits everything else we can do. So yeah, I'd like to do the whole kit and caboodle.
Yeah, well, again, as
Well, I would
Bill
suggest
Phillips
let's
said
get
at the last meeting, they don't.
Nowacki to give us some options going forward and figure out how expensive it is and what the possibilities are. I don't think we need to decide it tonight, but looking into the options makes sense to me.
I'm happy to have a more detailed conversation with Chris and everything, but what he did say at the last meeting, to reiterate, is it was Bill Phillips, they're not deciding based upon, if the road needs to be replaced, that's when they're checking the drainage. So it's not like they're sitting on a road, there's not a road that they said, well, we would pave this, but we don't know about the drainage. If they think it needs to be paved, they're looking at the drainage. That's kind of how they're.
Again, I think if we have a meeting that we look at the 3-year plan, the roads, and then we can know road by road which ones we don't know about drainage issues, we might be able to appease Steve's concerns or leave Steve's concerns and then go forward.
Happy to have more discussions on it,
Yeah, if we knew a number, and even if we said we wanted to hire somebody and spread the cost over a couple of years, that's probably where I would be leaning. There's obviously other ways to handle this. We could get through the budget, and if we come out and do what we're talking about, Mike, if you're saying now, over the summer, we look at it and then we decide, hey, we really want to do a study, we obviously would have fund balance to do that, or we would do bonding outside the budget or something else.
Any of those things, right?
Yeah, there'd still be.
Yeah, I'm sort of asking the question because it's budget time, and if we could put it in the budget.
No, I
If we knew
understand.
what
I
we
just
had to
don't know
do
if we're
and
going
we
to
could
get.
put it in the budget, it would be better than
I
not.
think there are so many unknowns and so many, I know you and I have been involved in roads for 10 years, and I think we need to get back to much bigger plan, much bigger discussion than just taking one little piece of it out of context. And I'd rather have a 3-year plan of we're going to spend X amount per year and how we're going to fund it and do a much bigger dive into it. It would be my opinion. It's just such a big number, and it's something that we've never really, and again, before Ken's time, we were never consistent on. So I'd like to get us consistent on.
Right, and again, whether we pay somebody to do it or whether we can do it ourselves, right? There's a whole
that's the
series of
discussion we
questions
can
that
have.
I have over, okay,
Right.
we've got a truck and we've got people who can do it. Well, are they doing that or are they off doing?
Right, we might not have the staff to do it,
Project B.
even if we have a truck, right?
Right, so, if Chris said, hey, I've got, I don't know how many guys go out on a truck. I got 3 guys, they go out with a truck and a scope and, we'll send them out for 4 weeks and we'll do as many roads as we can. I'd say, okay, maybe that gets us, a year or 2 down the road in planning. I don't know.
All right,
But that's,
well, we'll address it. That's the
I
summer
heard-
project. I love this idea.
you may disagree with me, but.
No, Steve.
No, but again,
somebody-
let's do it over
somebody
the summer.
disagree,
Let's
I'm
not
looking
do it
at-
tonight. Let's,
I'm just looking at the
let's do
trade-offs,
it
right?
as
So
an open
taking
meeting
that
with
crew out of
everybody.
service, what does that do to other stuff?
I agree.
Right.
Like,
Again,
it's a weird.
We
it's
don't
not
have
a-
enough
it's not an
information to
unreasonable
make a decision
question.
at this point.
You gotta,
Right,
understand what the cost is, maybe not a hard
Yeah.
cost, could be an opportunity cost.
Yeah,
right?
opportunity cost,
Right.
soft cost, best estimate.
Yeah.
I mean,
No, again, it's a bigger discussion, but I think it's one certainly worthwhile having because I want us all on the same page.
Sure.
All right. Anything else?
While we're on roads, just, sorry. While we are on, my car warranty is about to expire.
Good.
I get a call on it about it every day. I don't know what they're talking about.
While we're on roads, we did, Chris did go back to the HB to ask your question about that graph and that data and everything. So, interestingly enough, it's funny, when he was looking at it, he found an old exchange of emails that you and I had that he was sent, basically where they looked for the report. Remember, we were looking for the detailed report and they couldn't find it, and we answered that, like, okay, but long story short, they are going to do their best to, whatever system that was in at the time, that data, it is not in the current system. So the question is, does it exist in a different system that is still accessible? Is that raw data? So they're gonna look.
Wonderful.
And it may not,
Perfect.
it may be.
It may be
different-
shot.
It may be
Yeah.
shot, but, so it may be that, hey, they just had high level data that they plugged in, but we'll get that answer. So, all right.
I was hoping maybe
Awesome.
there was something like, oh, we put in a spreadsheet and it's sitting in somebody's,
So, yeah.
folder someplace.
Yeah,
But that's great. I appreciate that.
Oh,
Ken.
of course,
Thank you.
of course.
Yeah.
All right.
So those were the 2
Um,
follow-up items that I had in addition
Great.
to what was on the agenda.
Mike, I had one other thing on capital, if I may.
Oh, go.
So it actually ties in to some of the other questions you had, Steve, about Parks and Rec. So
Okay.
I was able to have a more detailed conversation with Missy. And yeah, as I said, the whole point of the event track was really just to add a piece that had more flexibility, not to switch the whole fleet over, where most of their fleet is Toro, which, by the way, Ventrec was bought out by Toro, so it is really all the same family. In their view, using a ball field groomer on a Ventrec would basically take that Ventrec out of service for the vast majority of the time during that season. It wouldn't be a good use of that machine. So they really need a dedicated ball field groomer during the season. So that's that piece. And and just in terms of getting it, when they weigh the much higher cost of the Ventrec and the attachments versus the other stuff, they like having it in the mix, but I don't think they want to at this point go further into it. And the parts for the Toros are less expensive than the parts for the Ventrec and all that other stuff. So it's a much higher operational cost for the Ventrec, even though they are great machines.
Okay.
It costs more. Right? So
Got it.
that was their thought process. But that said, I had mentioned that they were looking into this anyway because of some changes that came up. And I do have a couple of updates on capital. It's actually page 201. Those two those two machines specifically. So the ball field groomer that is in at 28,000 is actually now 29,000.
Okay,
Yeah, I know, because everything's going up.
we'll
So
survive. Everything's going up. That's
I
fine.
know. So I'd like to have you guys kind of bump that up a little
Adjust
bit.
that, sure.
And unfortunately, the Toro 4000D that was in here for 72 is no longer available. We cannot get that anymore. The 4100D is the next, is the current thing that would be, comparable. Unfortunately, that is now all out at 84,000. So that would have to bump up a little bit as well. So I'm taking away some of the upside that I gave you last time on the fire engine to,
No
If that
problem.
goes up, I wonder if the cost of the Ventrac becomes more
I know,
reasonable.
right? Yeah.
So Mike, I don't know if we need a motion, just a sense of the
We don't.
board.
We can
is-
just make the change, right? Exactly.
Yeah, just make the
Well, you
change.
guys-
Heidi will update it and
You
we'll go
guys-
from there.
Yeah, I mean, you guys vote on every line anyway at the end.
At the end.
and
Correct.
The total
At the end,
capital number.
right.
Yes, we
So-
do, yes.
So
Exactly.
we'll update the capital number and it'll be,
Perfect.
So,
as long as there's no objections to those changes.
no,
Nope.
just make sure that you capture that in the text, that it's a 4100D.
Yes, we will change that as well.
And so you need to change it on page 201 and
Yep.
206. While we're talking about the tractors and all that, I did notice, and I missed it before, on page 206, Parks and Rec is adding another Ventrac out in fiscal year 25.
I think that was a.
Ventrac tractor mower with the Kubota engine. So, I mean, that's fine.
Yeah, I think
Again,
that was a.
to me,
Guys,
They
I'm
can
about to
change
jump in
their
an
mind.
elevator, so I might lose you.
Okay.
I'll dial back in.
yeah, I mean, I'm just, Mike, looking at the out year, I just happen to be going through and rereading stuff and.
Got it.
And I noticed that, so,
Mm-hmm.
but again, I understand maintaining multiple sets of equipment and. Yeah, I just wanted somebody to really consider.
that. Yeah.
Look at it,
Understand
right.
what they're doing.
Yep.
Perfect. All right. I think that's all we had.
Did we make a
What's up?
change, did we make a change to the cost of the fire rescue conversion?
I.
That was, we mentioned that last week and
Yeah,
did we capture that in the actual changes?
I don't know if it was captured in them.
It was going down from 415 to 375,
Right,
and it's a
Right.
302, not a 320.
right.
Correct.
Right.
So
Okay.
has that been
We'll
updated
update that as well.
in the documentation? In the actual,
It will be.
With,
Okay.
in the actual, yeah.
yeah,
It will be.
okay.
All right.
So we're all anxiously awaiting medical insurance numbers, but nothing yet.
Correct.
Hopefully
Hopefully by them, yeah.
19.
Hopefully we'll have that by the 19th. All right.
So Mike, I had one other question. It's not on this year's budget. It's in the 5-year capital plan. What is the master town traffic study?
That was something that the town engineer.
I'll let
had-
you guys jump that. I'm going to jump into this. I got to go down to this. You lose you.
Okay. That was something I know the town engineer had put in as kind of a wish list item down the road. I'd have to go back to the original documentation to see I think it was just kind of a, looking at, we did that study through MetroCog that did 25 and 111. I think it was just kind of building on that and maybe looking at more roads that were more local that would be not covered by, because MetroCog used I don't know if that was done with LOPSIT funds or regional service grant funds, but it was done through a
grant.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
So I think it's more that, I mean, we'd have to get more, that's one that requires a little bit more vetting and
Flushing out.
meat on the bones,
Okay.
but it was just kind of
Yeah.
it was like a
I was
placeholder.
like, okay, what are we studying?
I just think trying to, evaluate, where could be intersections that need to be adjusted or, other, traffic concerns in certain areas that are.
Yeah, I know, I'm all
Others.
for looking at the big picture, and
Yeah.
the other item that I had was, we've got a couple of culvert replacements in the plan. Todd Drive and Judd Road, which I'm thrilled to see. Now that the engineer is part of DPW, is all of this gonna get maybe rolled into one road system,
Kind of.
you know,
I'm trying to
all
work-
combined kind of?
Trying to work towards
Is that
everything all the
okay.
same.
Right, as opposed to one guy doing it, coming in this, okay.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to put the work where it belongs.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, Todd Drive absolutely has to get done. It's unfortunate. It's a very costly project for a very relatively small road, but it has to be done. Judd Road, we are going to get done with a lot zip grant. We have to pay for the design, as you know, but that'll be we had funds in there for it's kind of like the small bridges
Right.
study anyway. I'm hopeful. We don't have we're certainly a long ways away from anything definitive. But I've had some very good conversations. I think I'm the chairman of MetroCog, and so we've been working through the regional COG's role in the Infrastructure and Jobs Act that's coming down from the feds.
Right.
And we're hopeful that, you know, these local bridges don't typically qualify for anything on the state or federal level, right? It's the local, but we all have them, right? So, you know, not
We
just
have
us.
tons of them.
We have tons of them. Trumbull has them,
Sure.
Easton, right? So we're trying to identify or navigate an approach that would allow us through the COG to package together multiple small bridges and culverts that are all within a same waterway network that might qualify for both design, engineering, and construction of a whole package deal of all those. So, I mean, because we're trying to, I mean, this is, you know, there's a lot of money coming out from the feds, and I think without us doing things like that, it's going to be difficult for any one town, unless you're like the city of Bridgeport or the city of Hartford, to really capitalize on it. So that's, you know, that's kind of the approach. So a lot of these small bridges things, we may be able to package together and get some federal funds for it, but for now, it's in there.
And that's fine. So
Yeah.
do we now have a comprehensive list of all of our bridges and culverts and what needs to be done to them?
We have a list. We have probably the most recent state inspection back when they were doing them that would indicate general conditions, but that's it. I mean, one of the reasons for wanting to have the design
$250,000
fund is for things like that, to say, listen, we just, you know, we got to pick, let's just, you know, pick one, let's look at it, design it, get it going, and then go to the next. But a lot of that, I think we're gonna have to be a little bit more strategic, because I don't want to, you know, if we think there's legs, let's say, of getting the feds to pay for the design, well, I don't want to spend a lot of our $250,000 on that if other.
No, I think
Yeah.
it's great if we could package it up. I know that, I mean, the town engineer first brought this issue forward to the council back in June of 2014. So
surprised me,
it takes quite a while to get this. We were going to do it, and then the state was going to do it, and then they didn't, and they did. So again, all for it. And if we can get somebody else to pay for it, that's even better.
I guess, and I had a question regarding budgeting and like master planning. Is there any plan in place or that has been discussed in the past about making some areas of town more pedestrian friendly with sidewalks?
I mean, there have been conversations, nothing, I mean, we've looked into it. The challenge is that sidewalks are extremely expensive, more than you would think. I think the last time Chris looked at it, I think it was about, don't hold me to this because I'm working off of memory, but I think it was like $250,000 to $300,000 a mile for sidewalks. I don't know if
Yeah, I don't know if I-
you never got that. I'd have to double check, but it was a big number.
And are we responsible for state roads or just local roads for sidewalks?
Well, once you, and I mean, so you look at the roundabout and all that, I mean, the state built it, but we're responsible for the maintenance.
The maintenance, right?
Yeah, so, yeah, that'd be the challenge, would be responsible for maintenance. The other thing that comes in is there's always the liability issue, right? So once you have a sidewalk, now it has to be cleared
Yeah.
once you snow, right? And you can, my understanding is, you can, as a community, pass a local ordinance that pushes that responsibility off to and that liability off to the homeowner
Mhm.
or the business owner, but we would have to, we'd have to have a conversation with the community about that. So there's, I'm just telling you, I'm just saying there's a lot of, there's a lot of things to think through, right? That said, hey, there's definitely places in town that I think would be great to have sidewalks. And I know there's people that will like, the problem is how do you, knowing that the dollars aren't gonna, you're gonna spend a lot of money to do anything of substance in our local roads. It's like I look at it, well, do I want to, is it better to do a sidewalk or is it better to pave some more roads? So that's kind of how I've been looking at it. The only other, the way to have done this, back would have been when, a lot of subdivision things were going in, would be to have it in the regulations, right? Because then you get it installed as part of the development. At this point, we'd be on the hook. The other thing that comes up is depending upon the road, you have to look at how much right of way we might have. And if we don't have enough right of way, now you're talking about a land taking, which the town would have to compensate the property owner for, which may be a really, depending upon the road, it could be a very small sliver, but add that up over several miles, that could add up. So that's another consideration. So again, I'm not trying to say it's not a good idea. Like I said, plenty of places, I think sidewalks would be a great idea.
I mean, particularly like 111 from the Rotary,
Complicated.
like down to Big Y. Because I see people walking there. I've seen people on like the motorized scooters, and it's if they get hit, is it somehow our liability because we didn't put in sidewalks, or is
no, and that would be. I mean, that's the state roads. That would be the state's responsibility to. I mean, they would have to do it, right? It would now. Most of the time they do that in concert with the town. I mean, there are potentially, I'd have to look at, there's some grants that could potentially be used for something like that.
Question if there were,
for just extending, because there's things that are designed for extending pedestrian access and things like that. So those come up from time to time, but again, we'd have to get the state to buy into it. And the same issue would come up. It would just be the state having to pay for any taking of land, not the town. But.
Yeah, I mean, I would just think anything that's leading into the green here should have sidewalks.
Yeah.
For all the events that are going on throughout the year, all the farmers markets, the roads are just clogged with people. People are flying, and that would make the most sense. To start
I
the way
agree.
out.
If you're going to prioritize, it's probably the first area.
And over in the Wolf Park area.
So that's been, Yeah, we've been kind of always kind of had in the back of our head if there's ever something, a grant that came up that was very specific to sidewalks, looking at it. I mean, on the state road, there may be more flexibility for existing grants to do something like that, but
under things like bicycles or whatever.
There's those two, but then you get into, I mean, I will tell you that, so in the 25-111 study that was done several years ago, again, it's there. You just now need funding to start doing stuff. A lot of those things were considered. There was definitely bicycle acts, more kind of bicycle. I don't know if there was necessarily a bicycle lane per se, but there's definitely more room for bicycles. There was, I think there might have been some sidewalk expansion in that as well, but you need the state to come up with a project to do that. Now, again, I've said in other meetings of, so we've got this great study that's sitting there and in theory, is the first step. So, or, any of these federal infrastructure dollars, can they be programmed to help move any of those things forward, right? There's specific intersections on 25 that were kind of a target. I mean, I'll just throw this down in Monroe, but 25 111, even though it's not in Monroe, it has a huge impact to Monroe traffic, right? So that's a hugely expensive undertaking, but gosh, if federal dollars could go towards.
What were they going to do that?
Without
going into too much detail.
There were a couple of different proposals on how that would work. And some of them were pretty unusual, like things that are done in other parts of the country that would be unusual here. So in terms of these long, circuitous things where like I'd have to go back to the.
Right, you've seen some of the interchanges that are being built, the new technology and the crossovers, and you go in the wrong lane you pass on the other side.
Yes, there was something like that, or if you're gonna go,
they're actually great. It sounds crazy, but go watch the video. It's
some of them are not as intuitive for us.
Well, the biggest problem with a lot of those is the amount of space side to side that they need.
Yes.
It's the width, and so you get an intersection like down there, you may not have the land going into wetlands, going into whatever other structures are there, businesses to do some of that. But yes, they do them in Florida, in some of these places where you've just got tremendous open space. Anyway, do you have anything else for the budget?
Well, next year is the town's 200th anniversary. Has there been funds pushed aside for something to celebrate?
Yes,
okay.
I've put $5,000 in the budget every year for this will be the 4th year, I believe. Sound about right?
5,000?
Yep. So
For
the bicentennial.
Oh,
committee?
just 5,000?
For the bicentennial.
For each of the last 4 years of non-lapsing funds.
Right. So there's,
I don't know how much we spent.
Are we doing anything particular?
I know that the committee is actively working on it. I haven't had a detailed briefing from them. I know they're working on a lot of different ideas. They'll probably be doing some additional fundraising as well, because that was always kind of the part of the plan, but we definitely wanted to have,
Grucci's coming.
20 grand for,
Grucci's are coming. Do a nice show.
So we should have 20,000 for.
It's been the last couple,
I think
probably could look it up.
I think we did,
but
I think we did 4 years of.
That sounds about right.
To get, which is, so I know they're actively planning.
Okay, so the money's been set aside for it.
Yeah, there's some, I mean, with the expectation there'd be, there'd be some fundraising too, so.
Rebecca, you got anything else? So you want to, I think we're done.
I don't. Was Mike going to call back in? I thought he mentioned he was, but if that's not happening.
I don't know.
I got the impression no.
Yeah, I thought he was leaving.
Okay, then someone want to make a motion?
Steve Kirsch, motion to adjourn.
Second.
All right, have a good night.